We're watching it on TV every night, seeing it all over our social media, and Canadians are hurting and crying out that it needs to stop. This is why we are calling for a humanitarian pause. A humanitarian pause is going to allow all the hostages to be released, allow us to continue doing the work of getting all foreign nationals out of Gaza. We got 75 of 80 Canadians out yesterday, which is solid progress, but there is so much more to do. And a pause long enough to start not just getting aid in, but getting resources and medication and supports while we begin doing the work of de-escalating the situation, and not just in Gaza, but in the West Bank, where there's increasing violence, danger of it spreading into Lebanon, and where we actually start doing the work of the real heavy lifting that's going to be required to get back on track to a two-state solution, to start imagining what the long-term future of a viable Palestinian state looks like, safe, secure, beside a safe, secure, viable, and successful Israeli state. This is what we need to get to. And every day that we continue to see suffering of thousands of millions of people makes it harder to get to that end state. Ça fait un mois et un jour maintenant.
One day now since Hamas launched its horrible, unimaginable attack against families and civilians in Israel. Since that day, we've been seeing death, destruction, devastation of families, seniors, mothers, and children. Canadians are watching that every day, this indescribable horror. This is why we are calling for a humanitarian pause, a significant pause that will allow us to release all hostages, all Jewish hostages, and help us to get foreign nationals out of Gaza. Yesterday, we were able to get 75 out of 80 Canadians on the list out, but there are still hundreds of people and families still there, and we will continue that work. That pause will allow us to send real, substantial aid. It will allow us to provide enough aid to help with this abominable humanitarian crisis for civilians in Gaza. Not only is food, water, and medication needed, but also assistance to help people help with this crisis. At the same time, we need to do everything we can to reduce violence, not just in Gaza, but in West Bank and other instabilities in the region, such as in Lebanon. We also need to be able to begin conversations on what the mid- and long-term solution will be. How these two states, these two prosperous states, can be established safely and viably. A Palestinian state that is responsible and protects citizens. An Israeli state that is protected and safe. This is what we need. Every day what we're seeing is dividing people across the world and across our country as well.
We're seeing right now a rise in anti-Semitism that is terrifying. Molotov cocktails thrown at synagogues, horrific threats of violence, targeting Jewish businesses, targeting Jewish daycares with hate. This needs to stop. This is not who we are as Canadians. This is something that is not acceptable in Canada, period. And period. The rise of Islamophobia we're seeing across this country and around the world is also unacceptable. the expressions of hate against Muslims, against Palestinians, against anyone waving a Palestinian flag. This is unacceptable. This is not who we are as Canadians. And if Canada can't figure this out, tell me what corner of the world is going to figure this out.
So how can Canada figure it out?
So, first of all of us as political leaders need to do everything we can to get back to bringing people together, to listen to each other, to understand that there are people across this country hurting, scared for themselves, scared for their kids here in Canada, scared for their loved ones on the other side of the world, and no sign of it getting better anytime soon. Canadians are scared in our own streets right now. We need to make sure that Canadians are doing what we do best, which is listening to our neighbors, understanding and acknowledging our neighbors' pain, even though it may be diametrically opposed in its cause to the same pain that we are feeling. This is a moment where a country like Canada, that has been deeply proud of the fact that we get along here in diversity better than just about any other place in the world, this is a time where we need to lead, we need to model here at home. Forget about leading on the world stage. Here at home, we need to model how we get through this. That's the responsibility of every single Canadian, to see how we are recognizing each other's pain and fear and move forward on it. À tous les jours, ici dans ce pays,
every day here in this country, people are hurting. For too long now, we've been seeing an incredible rise in anti-Semitism, attacks on synagogues, hate-motivated protests that are targeted against Jewish businesses, community centers, and daycare centers. It's unacceptable, and that's not who we are. We need to be there to understand and listen to the fear and to try and alleviate that fear and pain that Jewish people in Canada and across the world are feeling. At the same time, a rise in Islamophobia in Canada is also occurring. Attacks, intolerance, a recrimination against anyone who dares to fly a Palestinian flag. That's not who we are as Canadians. We must be there to understand the fear and pain that millions of Canadians are feeling. We need to be there to respond and to listen and understand. That's what we do. That's what we do better than almost anyone in the world. To be there in our diversity and strong communities and be there for our neighbors. And if we can't understand each other better in Canada, and not just understand, but listen to one another, then in which country in the world will that be possible? Will people be able, and these communities be able to come together that are so hurting and so afraid? It is all of our responsibilities as Canadians, not just political leaders. As leaders, we are calling on Canadians to be who we are, to be focused and centered on those values that we hold and being there for one another. These are the challenges we're going through these days. And this is coming out in the images that we are seeing from the victims on both sides. Let's remember who we are and do the work together.